Quick question. Where are you listening from today? Which city? Which country? Drop it below in the comment. Now, let's dive into today's story. The late September sun cast long shadows across the meticulously maintained lawn of the Blackwood residence. Marcus Blackwood stood at his kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes past his driveway. His weathered features and military-straight posture spoke of discipline earned through years of Marine service, now channeled into running Blackwood construction. Something caught his attention. His wife Victoria's Mercedes pulling into their driveway at 7:30 a.m. She claimed to be heading to an early meeting, but her designer outfit and fresh makeup told a different story. Marcus took another sip of coffee, his face impassive as he cataloged the subtle changes in his wife of 8 years. "Morning, honey." Victoria breezed through the door, Louboutin heels clicking against the hardwood floors. "You wouldn't believe the morning I've had. Emergency strategy meeting for the Johnson account." Marcus noted how she emphasized the name Johnson. Must have been quite the emergency to require full makeup and that new dress. Victoria's smile flickered for just a moment. A woman has to look her best at work. Not everyone appreciates the rugged construction worker look. She gestured dismissively at his work boots and well-worn jeans. "These boots paid for those shoes," Marcus replied evenly, setting down his mug. "And the house they're standing in? Oh, don't be so sensitive." Victoria's phone buzzed. Her fingers flew across the screen, a smirk playing at her lips. Some of us have evolved past measuring success by calluses and sweat. Marcus watched her practically dance up the stairs, already lost in whatever message had captured her attention. 8 years of marriage, and he'd never seen her so animated about work before. Then again, work hadn't included Richard Johnson until 3 months ago. The neighborhood barbecue at the Petersons' house that weekend proved enlightening. Marcus stood by the grill with Tom Peterson, noting how Victoria had positioned herself across the yard with a group of younger wives, all of them huddled around their phones like teenagers. "Heard about the new hotshot at Victoria's firm?" Tom asked, flipping burgers with practiced ease. "Richard something? Lisa says he's quite the character." "Johnson," Marcus supplied, taking a pull from his beer. "Richard Johnson. Apparently, he's revolutionizing their marketing strategy." Sarah Matthews, another neighbor, approached with an empty plate. "Oh, you're talking about Dick?" She winced, realizing her slip. "Sorry, that's what some of the women at the country club call him. He's been showing up there a lot lately. Very attention-seeking." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "The country club we pay membership for?" Sarah suddenly found her empty plate fascinating. "Victoria didn't mention? He's been her regular tennis partner for the past few weeks. They usually play during extended lunch breaks." She glanced at Victoria, who was now laughing dramatically at something on her phone. "I thought you knew." "Extended lunch breaks," Marcus repeated flatly. "No, she hadn't mentioned those." Tom tried changing the subject, but the damage was done. Across the yard, Victoria's phone buzzed again. Marcus watched her step away from the group, turning slightly to hide her screen as she typed. Later that evening, as they drove home, Victoria broke their silence. "The Petersons' parties used to be fun. Now it's just the same boring people talking about their boring lives." "Like Richard Johnson?" Marcus kept his eyes on the road. "Your tennis partner?" Victoria's laugh held a note of challenge. "Oh, did the Housewives Gossip Brigade fill you in?" "Yes, Richard and I play tennis. He's actually good at it, unlike some people who think sweating over blueprints counts as exercise." "Funny how you never mentioned these extended lunch breaks before. What's funny is how you're acting like some possessive teenager." Victoria's voice dripped condescension. "Richard is a colleague. A very successful, ambitious colleague who knows how to enjoy life. Maybe you should take notes." Marcus pulled into their driveway, killing the engine. "The only notes I'm taking are on how quickly you've forgotten who built everything you're enjoying." "Built?" Victoria sneered, stepping out of the car. "You swing hammers and boss around other men who swing hammers. Richard creates. He innovates. He's got you convinced you're better than all this," Marcus finished, gesturing at their upscale home. "Better than the life we built together." Victoria's smile turned cruel. "Maybe I am." She sashayed into the house, leaving Marcus standing in the driveway, his military-honed instinct screaming that something worse was coming. Their 8th wedding anniversary arrived on a crisp October morning. Marcus spent the early hours coordinating his crews at 3 different construction sites, making sure everything was set for him to leave early. He planned a surprise, though not the romantic kind Victoria might have expected. When he pulled up to their house at 2 p.m., Victoria's car was already in the driveway. Perfect. He grabbed his briefcase. Not the usual weathered leather one, but a new case containing very specific documents, and headed inside. Victoria was waiting in the living room, perched on their Italian leather sofa, like a cat about to pounce. A manila envelope sat on the coffee table in front of her. "You're home early," she purred, but her eyes held something predatory. "It's our anniversary." Marcus set his briefcase down carefully. "Thought we should talk." "How thoughtful. I have something special planned." Victoria picked up the manila envelope. "But first, a gift." She held out the envelope with a flourish. Marcus didn't move to take it. "Divorce papers?" Her smile widened. "With a special proposition attached. See, Richard and I have discussed it, and we thought—" "Richard Johnson." "Of course." "Yes, Richard." Victoria stood, smoothing her dress. "He's helped me see what I've been missing. Adventure. Passion. A man who knows how to satisfy a woman's needs." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "And tonight he's going to show us both how it's done." Marcus felt ice spread through his veins, but his voice remained steady. "Explain?" "Honey, I have a special gift," Victoria announced, her smile turning predatory. "I've been meeting someone at work, and tonight he's joining us for a wild night. He'll show you how to really treat me in bed." Marcus stood perfectly still, his military training kicking in as fury coursed through his veins. "The moment that fool steps foot into my house, I'll turn him into a mess and destroy his Johnson. Then, I'll kick both of you out on the streets for all the neighbors to laugh at." Victoria laughed, already texting Richard. "He's already here, sweetie. I invited him early." The doorbell rang. Marcus didn't flinch. 8 years of marriage ending with a doorbell chime. Somehow fitting. Victoria practically skipped to the door, throwing it open to reveal Richard Johnson in all his manufactured glory. 6 feet 4 inches of expensive suit and cosmetic dentistry walked into Marcus's house, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing an expression of practiced charm. "You must be the husband," Richard said, attempting to maintain his swagger. "Victoria's told me so much about." Marcus's response was immediate and calculated. He reached into his pocket and pressed a button on his key fob. Throughout the house, steel shutters descended over the windows with mechanical precision. The front and back doors locked automatically, their heavy bolts sliding home with decisive clicks. "What's happening?" Victoria demanded, her confidence wavering for the first time. Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. "Insurance," he replied calmly. "Against witnesses." Richard's perfect teeth showed in what he probably thought was a disarming grin. "Now, Marcus. Can I call you Marcus? Let's all stay calm here. Victoria, and I thought you might appreciate a more progressive approach to marriage." "Progressive?" Marcus's voice could have frozen hell itself. "Is that what you call fucking other men's wives and stealing their money?" Victoria's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, we'll get to that." Marcus picked up his briefcase. "But first, let's discuss your special gift. I have a few presents of my own to share." The sound of the briefcase locks clicking open echoed in the suddenly silent room. Through the steel-covered windows, the afternoon sun cast strange shadows, turning their tastefully decorated living room into something more resembling an interrogation chamber, which Marcus reflected as he watched panic begin to creep into both Victoria and Richard's expressions, wasn't entirely inappropriate. The real interrogation was about to begin. "Darling," Victoria tried, her voice honey-sweet but trembling slightly. "You're overreacting. Richard and you," Marcus cut her off, "should sit down. We have a lot to discuss before those shutters go back up." Richard glanced at the front door, obviously calculating his chances. Marcus smiled again, and this time there was something in it that made the taller man step back. "Sit," Marcus commanded, his voice carrying 8 years of built-up anger and the authority of his Marine Corps days. "Both of you. Now." They sat. Outside, a neighbor walked their dog past the Blackwood house. noting the unusual sight of the security shutters deployed in broad daylight. But they kept walking. Everyone knew Marcus had installed an expensive security system after that attempted break-in last month. Nothing to worry about. They had no idea that inside those steel-wrapped walls, 8 years of marriage were about to end in a way that would have the whole neighborhood talking for years to come. And Marcus Blackwood, former Marine and successful businessman, was about to remind everyone why you should never mistake dignity for weakness. The real show was just beginning. The silence in the locked-down living room stretched like a wire about to snap. Victoria's confidence had faltered, but her eyes still held defiance. Richard Johnson's perfect posture had developed a slight slouch, his expensive suit suddenly seeming more costume than clothing. The champagne bottle dangled forgotten from his manicured fingers. Marcus moved with deliberate calm, setting his briefcase on the coffee table. The steel shutters had transformed their bright living room into an intimate theater, perfect for the performance he'd planned. "Before we proceed with your special gift," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, "I have some gifts of my own to share." The briefcase opened with a precise click. Inside lay 3 manila folders, each labeled with meticulous care. Marcus lifted the first one, savoring the moment as both Victoria and Richard tracked his movements like prey watching a predator. "Interesting thing about success," Marcus mused, opening the first folder. "Everyone wants to claim it, but few want to earn it. Isn't that right, Richard?" Richard's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "Look, Marcus, whatever you think you know, show them," Marcus commanded, tossing the folder's contents onto the coffee table. Photographs spilled out, dozens of them. Each showed Richard in compromising positions with different women, all wearing wedding rings, all from Victoria's office. Victoria snatched up one of the photos. "What is this?" Her voice wavered between anger and fear. "Have you been stalking him?" "Stalking?" Marcus's laugh held no humor. "No, Victoria. I've been watching you. The rest came as a bonus." He turned to Richard. "Tell her about Susan from accounting. Or maybe Lisa in HR. Both still think they're your only side piece." Richard's tan seemed to pale. "Those were business meetings? In hotel rooms?" Marcus pulled out his phone, showing a video clip. "With your tongue down their throats? That's an interesting business strategy." Victoria stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're just trying to—" "Sit down." Marcus's command cracked like a whip. "We're just getting started." The second folder landed on the table with a heavier thud. Bank statements, loan documents, and bookies' receipts spread across the polished surface. "Your new boyfriend has expensive tastes, Victoria. Unfortunately, his income doesn't quite match his appetite." Marcus picked up a particularly damning statement. $700,000 in gambling debts. "That's quite a hole you've dug, Dick." Richard's facade began to crack. "How did you get those?" "Those are private." "Private?" Marcus's smile was razor-sharp. "Like the private accounts Victoria's been accessing at 2 a.m. to help cover your losses?" Victoria went completely still. "What are you talking about?" The third folder emerged. Marcus handled it like a dealer presenting the winning hand. "The same security company that installed our home system also handles your office building. When you started staying late, I had them send me the footage. Imagine my surprise when I saw you accessing financial records in the middle of the night. You had me followed?" Victoria's outrage sounded hollow. "No, I had you protected. There's a difference." Marcus spread out the documents. "But it seems the only threat to you is yourself. Care to explain these transfers? Or should we wait for the forensic accountants?" Victoria's hands trembled as she looked at the evidence. Each page detailed transfers from company accounts to offshore holdings, carefully disguised but clearly traceable. Her embezzlement laid bare in black and white. "How much has she given you, Richard?" Marcus asked conversationally. 200,000? 3? Must be nice having a sugar mama willing to steal for you." Richard stood, straightening his jacket. "This is all circumstantial. You can't prove." Marcus's phone buzzed. He checked it with exaggerated interest. "Perfect timing. Richard, would you like to explain why your bookie just texted confirming receipt of the blackmail photos? Or should we wait for Victoria's boss to call about the anonymous tip regarding missing funds?" The transformation was immediate. Richard's 6 feet 4 inches frame seemed to collapse in on itself, as the implications hit him. His carefully cultivated image of success and sophistication evaporated, revealing the desperate con man beneath. "You're bluffing," Richard stammered, but his eyes darted to the windows, still sealed behind steel shutters. Victoria's phone erupted in a cascade of notifications. Her face drained of color as she read message after message. "You didn't?" she whispered. "Oh, but I did." Marcus leaned back, the picture of relaxed control. "Your entire office knows now. The police are probably reviewing the evidence as we speak." Victoria lunged for her purse. "I need to call my lawyer." "Which one?" Marcus asked. "The firm's lawyer who's currently discovering your theft. Or our divorce lawyer, who just received proof you violated the prenup's infidelity clause?" Richard made a break for the door, forgetting it was locked. He yanked uselessly at the handle, his composure completely shattered. "Let us out," Victoria demanded, but fear had replaced her earlier arrogance. "You can't keep us here." "Actually, I can. Home invasion protocol." Marcus held up his phone. "As far as anyone knows, I'm dealing with burglars. In fact," he pressed a few buttons, "I just alerted the neighborhood watch. They're probably gathering outside right now." Victoria tried a different approach, her voice turning sultry. "Marcus, baby, we can work this out. Whatever you want." "What I want?" Marcus stood slowly. "What I want is for you both to understand exactly what you've lost. Richard, those photos are already circulating among your other victims. Victoria, your parents called. They're particularly interested in how you've been handling their investment in the firm." Richard slumped against the door. "My bookie. He'll kill me." "That sounds like a personal problem." Marcus checked his phone again. "Oh, and the local news station is very interested in the story. Something about a 6 feet 4 inches con man and his accomplice targeting wealthy women. Should make quite the headline." Victoria's mascara began to run as tears formed. "Please, Marcus, think about my career. Like you thought about our marriage?" Marcus's voice could have frozen fire. 8 years, Victoria. 8 years I gave you everything, and you repaid me with cruel jokes and planned humiliation." He turned to Richard, who had sunk to the floor. "And you, the big man, the sophisticated player. Look at you now. Can't even stand up straight without your borrowed confidence." Victoria and Richard exchanged desperate glances, their alliance crumbling under pressure. They began talking over each other, offering money, threats finally descending into begging. Marcus calmly made more calls, to Victoria's parents, to Richard's other victims, to local media. With each call, their world shrank a little more. "The Marines taught me something valuable," Marcus said, watching them squirm. "The best defense is a good offense. You wanted to humiliate me? Congratulations. You've succeeded in destroying yourselves instead." Through the steel shutters, they could hear voices gathering outside. Neighbors drawn by the alert, phones undoubtedly recording. Victoria buried her face in her hands, her designer dress wrinkled and mascara-stained. "My reputation," Richard moaned. "Everything I've built." "Built?" Marcus's laugh was genuine this time. "You haven't built anything. You're a parasite who feeds off others' success. And now everyone knows it." Victoria made one last attempt. "Marcus, think about what this will do to both of us. Our friends, our social circle, our—" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "There is no our anymore, Victoria. You made sure of that when you decided to turn our anniversary into a spectacle of my humiliation." His phone buzzed again, messages from the neighbors asking if they should call the police. Perfect timing. You know what the funny part is? Marcus gathered the evidence back into his briefcase. "If you'd simply asked for a divorce, I would have given you a generous settlement. Instead, you chose cruelty. You chose to make it a game." He checked a security app. At least 20 neighbors had gathered outside, phones ready. The stage was set. "And now," Marcus said, reaching for the lockdown controls, "the game is over." Victoria stumbled toward him. "Wait, please, there must be something." "There's nothing," Marcus cut her off, "except the consequences of your choices. Richard's other victims are already comparing notes. Your firm's accountants are combing through the books. Your parents are calling their lawyers. And our neighbors—" He smiled. "Well, they're about to witness quite a show." Richard had given up all pretense of dignity, slumped against the wall like a broken mannequin. His designer suit was wrinkled, his perfect hair disheveled. The great Richard Johnson, reduced to his true form. Victoria's tears had stopped, replaced by a blank stare of shock as reality settled in. Her phone continued buzzing with messages she no longer dared to read. Marcus stood in the center of his living room, surrounded by the wreckage of his marriage, but somehow taller than ever. He hadn't raised his voice once, hadn't thrown a punch, hadn't needed to. "You wanted to show me how a real man handles things," he said quietly. "Thank you for the opportunity to demonstrate." His finger hovered over the lockdown release. Outside, the crowd grew larger, drawn by the neighborhood watch alert about caught intruders. Everything was in place. The time had come to let the world see exactly who Victoria and Richard really were. Sometimes, Marcus reflected, the best revenge isn't violence. It's simply giving people enough rope to hang themselves, and then letting everyone watch them fall. Marcus's finger pressed the lockdown release button with surgical precision. The steel shutters rose with a mechanical hum, revealing the gathering crowd outside. Phones raised like torches in the fading evening light, their cameras ready to capture what everyone believed was a burglar takedown. Victoria's eyes widened as reality crashed in. Through the rising shutters, she could see Susan from 3 houses down, phone held high. Tom Peterson stood with his teenage sons, all recording. Even Mrs. Henderson, the retired teacher who never left her house after 5 p.m., stood on her lawn in her gardening hat. "What have you done?" Victoria's voice cracked. "Given you the audience you wanted." Marcus opened the front door, though perhaps not quite the show you planned. Richard made a desperate lunge toward the back door, but Marcus's voice stopped him. "That exit's covered too. Your choice is simple. Walk out the front door now, or wait for the police I didn't actually call yet. Your bookie might appreciate knowing your current location." The mention of the bookie drained the last resistance from Richard's frame. His expensive suit hung like a costume on a scarecrow, his carefully styled hair disheveled from nervous sweating. "This wasn't supposed to happen," Victoria whispered, mascara trails marking her cheeks. "You were supposed to— to what?" Marcus's voice carried just enough for the nearest neighbors to hear. "Break down? Beg? Accept your little humiliation game." The word humiliation rippled through the gathered crowd. Phones shifted, focusing tighter on the doorway where Victoria and Richard stood frozen. Someone in the back called out, "Everything okay, Marcus?" "Just fine, Dave." Marcus's calm reply carried clearly. "Just dealing with some uninvited guests who planned a rather unpleasant surprise for my anniversary." The word anniversary triggered another wave of murmurs. Victoria tried to shield her face, but it was too late. Recognition spread through the crowd as neighbors connected the dots. Victoria Blackwood, caught with a strange man on her anniversary. Richard broke first. His height seemed to collapse in on itself as he bolted through the door, trying to push past the crowd. Someone started slow clapping. Another joined in. The rhythm spread until the entire street echoed with it, a synchronized soundtrack to Richard Johnson's desperate escape. Victoria followed, her designer heels clicking against the pavement as she ran. The applause grew louder, punctuated by the electronic sounds of dozens of phones recording what would soon become the neighborhood's most shared videos. "Walk of shame," a teenage voice called out, followed by laughs and more clapping. Marcus stood in his doorway, straight-backed and composed, watching his wife of 8 years flee down the street with her lover. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The scene spoke for itself. The story exploded faster than anyone expected. By morning, local news vans parked along the street, hungry for details about the 6 feet 4 inches con man and his accomplice. Marcus's security footage, showing Victoria and Richard plotting his humiliation, circulated through private neighborhood groups before hitting social media. Victoria's firm acted swiftly. Janet Morrison, the CEO, called an emergency board meeting the same morning. "The evidence is irrefutable," Janet announced to the gathered executives. Victoria Blackwood has been accessing company accounts after hours, transferring funds through a complex series of offshore accounts. Initial estimates suggest losses exceeding $500,000. Charles Blackwood, Victoria's father and major investor, sat ashen-faced as forensic accountants presented their preliminary findings. "My own daughter," he muttered, "using my investment to fund her lover's gambling debts." The firm pressed charges by noon. Richard's other victims emerged like witnesses at a revival, each with similar stories. Susan from accounting described how he'd seduced her with promises of investment opportunities. Lisa from HR admitted to taking out loans to help him cover temporary cash flow issues. Marcus's evidence, meticulously gathered and organized, provided the pattern prosecutors needed. Richard Johnson wasn't just a cheater. He was a calculated predator who targeted wealthy, married women, using their resources to fund his gambling addiction. Victoria's attempt to spin the story backfired spectacularly. In a desperate social media post, she tried painting herself as the victim of a controlling husband. "Marcus Blackwood humiliated me in front of our entire neighborhood," she wrote. "He's trying to destroy my reputation because I found happiness with someone else." Marcus's response was simple. He released the security footage showing Victoria and Richard planning their anniversary surprise. The timestamp showed them in Marcus's house hours before he returned, laughing as they discussed how they would force him to watch their intimacy. "Let's see how the traditional man handles some modern entertainment," Victoria's recorded voice echoed. "God, I can't wait to see him break." The footage went viral. Victoria deleted her social media accounts, but the damage was done. Her own parents publicly distanced themselves. "We raised our daughter with values," Elizabeth Blackwood told reporters outside their country club. "We don't recognize the woman in those videos." 6 months passed. Marcus stood in his new kitchen, bigger and brighter than the old one, watching the morning news. Victoria's sentencing hearing made headlines. 3 years for embezzlement, plus restitution orders exceeding $1 million when civil penalties were included. "At least she's got retail experience now," Hannah commented, sliding a coffee across the counter to Marcus. Her understanding smile reflected none of the bitterness her own past could have justified. As a military widow who'd lost her husband to friendly fire, she understood both loyalty and betrayal. Marcus took the coffee, appreciating how naturally Hannah fit into his reformed life. They'd met at a veterans fundraiser 2 months after the incident, her practical nature and genuine respect for traditional values drawing them together. "You saw Richard made the news again?" Hannah gestured at the paper. "Caught in Cincinnati trying to run the same scam. His bookie's friends found him first, though." Marcus nodded. Richard Johnson's attempt to flee had ended predictably, with broken kneecaps in a Cincinnati alley and an arrest warrant for jumping bail. His sophisticated player persona was now a cautionary tale, featured in corporate security seminars about predatory dating schemes. The doorbell rang, signaling the start of their housewarming party. The neighborhood had insisted on hosting it, turning Marcus's new home into a celebration of karma served. Tom Peterson arrived first, carrying a bottle of the same champagne brand Richard had brought that night. "Thought you might appreciate the irony," he grinned. Others followed, couples who'd watched the drama unfold, new friends who appreciated Marcus's handling of the situation. Several of Richard's victims had hired Blackwood Construction for renovations, turning betrayal into business success. To justice, Sarah Matthews proposed a toast, her own divorce from a cheating husband finalized the month before. And to Marcus, who showed us all how to serve it cold, Marcus raised his glass, but his victory held no malice. He'd protected what was his, exposed what was wrong, and moved forward without compromising his values. The neighborhood remembered not the salacious details, but the dignity with which he'd handled betrayal. Victoria now worked retail at a mall 2 towns over, her designer wardrobe replaced by a polyester uniform. Her attorney had quit when she couldn't make payments, leaving her to face the civil suits alone. The prenup she'd planned to challenge stood firm. Marcus's evidence of her infidelity and attempted humiliation, leaving no room for legal maneuvering. The story became a legend in their social circle, shared at dinner parties and neighborhood gatherings. Not for the drama or the revenge, but for the lesson it taught about consequences and character. "I heard Victoria try to get her old job back," Lisa from HR mentioned during the party. Janet Morrison just laughed and sent her the security footage again. Marcus didn't need to gloat. The truth had done all the work for him. His construction company thrived, expanding into 3 new counties. Hannah brought warmth back into his life without the constant power plays and cruelty that had marked Victoria's final years. As the housewarming party wound down, Marcus stood on his new back deck, Hannah's hand comfortably in his. The night air carried sounds of genuine laughter and friendship, a sharp contrast to the artificial sophistication Victoria and Richard had tried to project. You know what the best part is? Hannah mused, watching their guests mingle. You never had to throw a single punch. Just let them destroy themselves. Marcus smiled, remembering his last words to Victoria through his security camera after she'd been sentenced. She tried to blame him one final time for her downfall. Sometimes the best revenge isn't violence, he'd told her. It's letting people destroy themselves while everyone watches. The camera had caught her expression as the truth finally hit home. All her sophistication, all her cruel games, all her attempts at power plays, undone by the simple act of exposing her true nature to the world. Marcus's new house stood as a testament to moving forward rather than dwelling in pain. The sight of intended humiliation had become a celebration of karma, justice, and the power of standing firm in one's values. Victoria and Richard's power couple dreams ended in separate cells, their sophisticated facades stripped away to reveal the hollow cores beneath. Meanwhile, Marcus's life expanded, filled with genuine relationships and success built on real foundations rather than manipulation and lies. The neighborhood never forgot, but not for the reasons Victoria and Richard had planned. They remembered how Marcus Blackwood turned public humiliation into public justice, without ever lowering himself to their level. Sometimes, the best victories come not from what you do to others, but from simply stepping back and letting them face the consequences of their own actions. For Marcus Blackwood, that was revenge enough. Epilogue: 5 years later. The autumn breeze carried the scent of barbecue smoke across Marcus and Hannah Blackwood's expansive backyard. Their annual neighborhood gathering had become something of a tradition, marking both the season's change and a different kind of anniversary, one that reminded everyone how justice sometimes arrived in unexpected packages. Marcus, now approaching 50 but carrying it well, stood at his professional-grade grill while his stepdaughter Emily, Hannah's 12-year-old, arranged cornbread on a platter. His construction company's logo, recently redesigned, adorned the new outdoor kitchen's backsplash, a testament to Blackwood Construction's expansion into luxury home development across 3 states. Mail came, Hannah announced, walking out with a stack of envelopes, including another one from the correctional facility. Marcus raised an eyebrow, but kept his attention on the grill. Victoria's quarterly attempts at communication had become as predictable as they were futile. 5 years hadn't softened her consequences or his resolve. Same as the others? He asked, though they both knew the answer. Hannah nodded, setting aside the unopened letter. Return to sender. Though Sarah mentioned Victoria's up for parole review next month. The news rippled through the gathering guests. Sarah Matthews, now Blackwood Construction's HR director, confirmed with a grimace. My cousin works in the prison system. Says Victoria's been a model inmate teaching marketing classes to other prisoners. Still runs her little schemes, though, just with cigarettes instead of corporate funds. Tom Peterson, carrying a casserole his wife made, joined the conversation. Heard she tried starting some MLM scheme from inside. Got her privileges revoked for 3 months. Old habits, Marcus commented, his voice free of malice. He'd moved past anger years ago, arriving at something between indifference and mild anthropological interest in his ex-wife's continued attempts at manipulation. The party swelled as more neighbors arrived. Many faces were new. The neighborhood had changed over the years, but enough remained to remember that night, when justice wore steel shutters and carried a phone full of evidence. Janet Morrison, Victoria's former CEO, who'd since become a close friend and major client of Blackwood Construction, arrived with her husband. Just came from a board meeting, she announced, accepting a drink. You'll never guess who tried applying for a marketing position through a subsidiary. She didn't. Hannah gasped, though her smile suggested she absolutely believed Victoria would try. Through a staffing agency. Using her maiden name, Janet shook her head. 5 years, and she still doesn't understand how background checks work. Or Google. The conversation shifted to Richard Johnson, whose fate had taken even darker turns. After his arrest in Cincinnati 5 years ago, he'd tried recreating his con man scheme in prison, targeting wealthy inmates' wives during visitation. It ended badly. Last I heard, Tom shared, lowering his voice despite the outdoor setting. He crossed the wrong inmate's wife. Got transferred to maximum security after someone rearranged his face. Not so pretty now, from what I understand. 6'4" doesn't mean much when you're sharing space with actual criminals, Sarah added. My cousin says he spends most of his time in protective custody. Still owes hundreds of thousands to his bookies. Marcus listened quietly, tending to his grill. He learned through business channels that Richard had tried contacting some of his former victims, seeking investment opportunities in his prison enterprises. The letters were returned unopened, their recipients wiser and warier. Emily, wise beyond her years, looked up from her cornbread arrangement. Dad, is it true you never even hit them? My friend's mom says you're her hero because you showed her how to handle her divorce without getting mad. Marcus shared a warm look with Hannah. They'd married 3 years ago, blending their families with the same careful consideration Marcus brought to his construction projects, building on solid foundations, one day at a time. Violence rarely solves anything permanently, he told Emily. Sometimes the best way to handle people who want to hurt you is to step back and let them face themselves. The gathering had grown large enough to spill onto the front lawn. New neighbors mingled with old, sharing stories and building connections. Marcus's annual barbecue had become known as much for its networking opportunities as its food. Several of Richard's former victims had become successful businesswomen after the scandal forced them to take control of their finances. Lisa from HR, who'd lost nearly $50,000 to Richard's schemes, now ran her own financial literacy program for women. She credited her recovery to Marcus's methodical exposure of the con. Sometimes public humiliation is the best teacher, she told a group of newcomers. I thought I'd die of shame when everything came out. Instead, I found out I wasn't alone. We all healed together. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard. Someone had brought out old news clippings. The story still fascinated people, especially newcomers. The headlines told it all. Socialite and con man face justice. Corporate embezzlement scheme exposed. Local builder turns tables on cheating wife's plot. Victoria's parents, who'd moved to Florida after the scandal, still sent Marcus Christmas cards. They'd written him into their will instead of their daughter, though Marcus had quietly arranged for any inheritance to go to Emily's college fund. Some forms of karma, he believed, should skip a generation. As darkness fell, the party moved indoors to the great room Marcus had designed himself. The house, 3 times the size of his former home, stood as a testament to moving forward rather than dwelling in pain. Every detail, from the security systems to the open sight lines, reflected lessons learned and wisdom gained. Hannah gathered everyone for a group photo, an annual tradition. As phones raised to capture the moment, Marcus reflected on how technology, once intended as a tool for his humiliation, had instead documented his redemption. You never check her letters? Emily asked later, helping clean up. The unopened prison envelope sat on the counter, Victoria's careful handwriting visible through the security screening marks. No need, Marcus replied. The past is the past. We build forward. Recent updates on Victoria painted a predictable picture. Her attempts at early release had been denied, her pattern of manipulative behavior noted by prison psychiatrists. She'd written a blog post about surviving betrayal that conveniently reversed the roles, but the internet's memory was long. Comments quickly filled with links to the original security footage. Richard's story circulated in true crime podcasts, his methodology dissected by experts in fraud and psychology. His rise and fall became a case study in corporate security seminars. The handsome con man now walked with a limp, his movie star looks ruined by prison justice. His schemes had earned him an extended sentence, with additional charges pending in 3 states. The neighborhood itself had transformed. Property values rose as Marcus's story attracted successful professionals who appreciated the community's resilience. The street where Victoria and Richard had performed their walk of shame now hosted block parties and charity events. Sarah Matthews had married last spring. Marcus and Hannah attended, noting how the ceremony celebrated loyalty and partnership rather than just romance. The neighborhood watched over its own now, wiser about predators in expensive suits bearing champagne and promises. In quiet moments, Marcus sometimes reflected on the lessons learned. His construction company's motto, "Building on Truth," spoke to more than just architecture. Each project, like his new life, began with careful planning and ended with something solid and real. The investigation into Victoria's corporate theft had uncovered similar schemes at other firms, leading to industry-wide reforms. Marcus occasionally consulted on corporate security, sharing his experience to help others protect themselves from workplace predators. Hannah's military advocacy work dovetailed perfectly with Marcus's values. Together, they'd established a foundation helping veterans transition into construction careers. Some of their best project managers came from military backgrounds, bringing discipline and precision to every build. As the last guest departed, Marcus and Hannah stood on their back deck, watching the stars emerge. Emily had fallen asleep on the indoor sofa, peaceful in the security of their blended family. Victoria's letter, Hannah mentioned softly. Same return address. Same promises to explain everything. Same request for money. Marcus smiled, wrapping an arm around his wife. Some people never learn. That's their prison, more than any cell. The letter would go back unopened, like all the others. Victoria's attempt at rewriting history had failed against the simple power of recorded truth. Her sophisticated facade had crumbled under fluorescent prison lights, leaving her to trade designer heels for institutional shoes. Richard's own prison time served as a bitter reminder that charm couldn't deflect karma forever. His victims had rebuilt their lives stronger and wiser, while he aged ungracefully in maximum security. Last anyone heard, he'd tried pitching a memoir about his misunderstood life. Publishers passed, preferring the documented truth to his manipulated version. The night air carried distant laughter from departing guests, a reminder that life moved forward. Marcus had built something real: a strong marriage, a successful business, a legacy of integrity. No amount of prison-written letters could touch that foundation. You know what still amazes me? Hannah mused, leaning into his embrace. You never had to raise your voice. Never threw a punch. Just showed everyone exactly who they were. Marcus thought about the security footage that still circulated occasionally, showing Victoria and Richard planning their cruel game. Their sophisticated masks had slipped, revealing the hollow people beneath. No additional punishment could match the simple exposure of truth. Sometimes, he repeated his now famous phrase, "The best revenge isn't violence. It's letting people destroy themselves while everyone watches." Emily stirred inside, reminding them of time's passage and healing power. They had schools to consider, careers to build, lives to live. Victoria's quarterly letters and Richard's prison tales grew less relevant with each passing season. The security system hummed quietly, protecting something far more valuable than mere property. Within these walls, Marcus and Hannah had built a home where truth prevailed and karma arrived right on schedule. Some said pride comes before a fall. But for Marcus Blackwood, pride came in building something real after the fall had claimed its due. In the end, that was revenge enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.